The Orlando Magic have acquired Desmond Bane, so what are they getting and what comes next for the Orlando Magic? It's a crossover episode with our friends from Locked On Grizzlies today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is June 17th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can always follow me on Twitter at PhilipR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we chat with our friends from Locked On Grizzlies to get the lowdown on Desmond Bane, what he brings to the Orlando Magic, what went behind the deal, and what comes next for both teams. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We appreciate you, all of our everydayers who listen to Locked On Magic 5 days a week and sometimes on the weekends when things happen. Appreciate all of you who listened to Locked On Magic. Yesterday was a very good day on the show. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Some quick house cleaning before we get to our episode today. Jeff Weltman did speak to the media today. We got a chance to talk to Jeff Weltman about this trade, what went behind the trade, and I touched on some of it in the conversation upcoming with Locked On Grizzlies. We will get into more of that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll also hear from Desmond Bane himself, who is in Orlando. Will be introduced to the media tomorrow. Very, very big deal when you have a trade where a player is introduced. That means it's a big deal. We will hear from Desmond Bane tomorrow, and we'll talk all about what he said, what Jeff said, and continue to get into what comes next for the Orlando Magic over the next few days. But tomorrow, we'll focus on what Jeff Weltman and Desmond Bane had to say about the new look Orlando Magic as we continue to move forward, and we'll recap Game 5 of the NBA Finals, which is going on as I'm recording. But let's not waste much more time because I have a 10-minute break to get to. Let's talk with our friends from Locked On Grizzlies to tell you more about Desmond Bane.
Philip, I was okay. I like to tell people that I had an unhealthy relationship with Desmond Bane. He probably didn't know who I was or if I existed, but it was like the John Oliver to Adam Driver relationship. I was John Oliver. He was Adam Driver. It made Damichael uncomfortable at times. And I was okay with Desmond Bane being traded until I saw the video of him in Orlando and the dap heard round the world. Even Kevin Durant's tweeting about this freaking dap. It was phenomenal, the reaction that he got, and he makes a 3 on the first video there, him in Orlando. And I'm not okay anymore. I'm not okay. I'm upset with you. I'll get through it by the end of this episode, but you have taken Desmond Bane from me, Philip, and I am very upset.
Well, I want to clear the air first. That is a Jamal Mosley thing. Jamal Mosley is a give this guy a bear hug type.
That was a phenomenal dap. Damichael, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I saw it. It was looked like they've been together for years. Yeah.
That is that. I mean, does Desmond Bane on the select team any of the last few years?
No,
I don't think so. No.
I mean, but that's like who Jamal Mosley is. Like he is all about his players and all about the people. And that's one of the reasons why he has such a great relationship with so many players around the league. But I think you can sense there's a lot of excitement about bringing Desmond Bane in. I mean, it's been a while since the Magic have been in a position to make this kind of all-in move that actually makes a little bit of sense. If your Magic fans are probably getting some flashbacks to the Serge Ibaka trade way back in the day. But this is you could just tell Jeff Weltman spoke to the media today in Orlando. He said like that Desmond Bane's exactly who we want. And they were kind of shocked that he became available at all for the Magic to pursue. And obviously they kind of gave a Godfather offer. They kind of mortgaged a lot of their future to get it done. But the Magic need shooting so desperately. They need playmakers. They need more scoring. Desmond Bane is one of the best shooting guards in the league. It seems like he deserves a bear hug.
Damichael, how quickly did this come together? Reports that I saw from a couple of different places, 24 hours, Bane knew there were some sort of discussions. There was not really anything on our radar that Bane was on the trading block. Is this similar to what Philip talked about and what I talked about on yesterday's episode of Locked On Grizzlies? The Magic eventually got to a place with an offer that Memphis couldn't refuse?
Yeah, these two sides have been talking for a little bit. This is not something that started, the day before or anything like that. Philip, you can attest. The Magic are usually pretty quiet with their work, and we know, here locally with the Grizzlies, they are very quiet with their work behind the scenes as well. So you had kind of two franchises who were kind of in lockstep with the idea that, hey, no leaks throughout this process. Let's work in silence. Let's work behind closed doors. Let's get this done. And when people find out, they'll find out. So yeah, I don't think it was really one side or the other, just like strongly saying here, like I don't think it was the Magic saying we want Desmond Bane so badly here, we're throwing all this at you. I don't think the Grizzlies were saying we want to get rid of Desmond Bane so badly, give us your best offer, anything like that. It just gradually came together. But the situation, as you talked about, makes sense for both sides in a way. Of course, here on the Grizzlies side, Memphis is in a situation where you just kind of felt like with that trio, with the Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. trio, with the financial implications coming up with that core, it's not like necessarily with the Magic, you feel like, okay, one more move, boom, we're there. On the Grizzlies side, there isn't enough confidence in the fact that Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane can be that core that leads the Grizzlies to that Western Conference Finals, to the NBA Finals, or potentially even a championship. So the Grizzlies are kind of retooling. You saw everyone talking about, oh, it is Ja trades or Jaren trades. No, absolutely not. But it's something, yeah. Basically, you got two sides here that, kind of work through the weeds a little quiet on both sides, and it just worked out that way. And now you got a Magic team who gets a player who seems like he's going to be a great fit for them. And then on the Grizzlies side, you got a lot of assets to play with this summer.
Philip, you talked about how, the Orlando Magic general manager said, this is a perfect fit. This is the exact kind of guy that we're looking for. And I tend to agree with that because, again, big fan of Desmond Bane. Bane is a consummate professional warrior. You'll see him on the sideline with like 4 heating pads and ice bags on him. And he's going to play through every injury he possibly can. He's a tough dude. I talked about on yesterday's episode, one of the ironies here is, Zach Kleiman, the Grizzlies GM, has been saying, oh, we need dogs. We need dogs. They traded away the dog, right? The one that is there that you could say is a certified dog that they just gave to the Orlando Magic for that Godfather offer. What are you expecting Bane to be? How is Bane going to help Orlando for you? Because I do wonder, I think it was Stephen Cameron, I was on his podcast recently, and, if you're looking for him to be a point guard, right? Because Orlando still has a pretty big hole there that we might talk about later on in the show. If you're looking for him to be that, I don't see that ending well for the Magic and their fans. If you focus on the 3-point shooting, obviously the 3-level scoring, all the things that the Magic struggled with, 27th ranked offense this past season. If that's your emphasis, I think he's going to do well. But if you're really sinking your teeth into, oh, well, he can also play the point, that makes me nervous for Magic fans.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this comes together because it feels like the Magic are kind of taking the money ball approach. They don't have a point guard, but they're going to create a point guard in the aggregate almost. It's, they have last year, Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner had the ball in their hands a lot. And as the Magic pretty, the Magic operate very quietly, but it was very, very clear the Magic were fishing around for guards elsewhere. And everyone kind of assumed they're looking for a point guard, and all the point guards that we were looking at on the market all had some flaw that made them not be quite a Magic player. They were, a lot of Magic fans were focused on Trae Young, and Trae Young needs the ball in his hands a little too much. He's going to take the ball away from Paolo and Franz. Anthony Simons with the Portland Trailblazers doesn't have the defensive reputation that the Magic like. He statistically rates as one of the worst defenders in the league. And so the Magic were kind of trying to find this unicorn. Let's just find the perfect, the shooting star that makes the most sense. I think with Desmond Bane, they're not going to take the ball out of Paolo and Franz's hands. Jalen Suggs is still the quote-unquote point guard, but Desmond Bane does enough point guard things to just kind of balance everything out a little bit. Like, they can run pick and rolls with him. I think I looked up the stats, like according to like Synergy, he was as efficient on pick and rolls as I think only Franz Wagner was more efficient on pick and rolls, and he did it on decent volume. He does enough of that, and the Magic have enough players now who can attack off the dribble that they can kind of find the right balance. And I think obviously early in the season, training camp, they're going to have to find that balance and exactly how they can use them. But ultimately, as you mentioned, Orlando needs shooting desperately. They had, I think, the worst 3-point shooting season in the last decade. It was a huge problem in the playoffs. It got to a point where Paolo and Franz just did not trust anyone else to make shots. And, you could see Paolo just decide, I'm going to take this contested mid-range jumper because I'm more efficient at that than dishing to Anthony Black in the corner for three or whoever it might be. The Magic need that outlet. They need someone who can get really hot really quickly, which Desmond Bane can do. And then Bane averaged more than 5 assists per game. Like he's going to move the ball and pass it as well. So having another player who can attack is just so vital for this Magic team continuing to evolve and develop.
Damichael, do you see anything else that Bane brings to the table? We like to talk about the tryhards defensively. Luke Kennard, the memorial Luke Kennard tryhard. Desmond Bane is a much better defender than Luke Kennard. The fact that he goes into a situation in Orlando that is an elite defensive club, Bane is not an elite defender, but he is capable of doing enough that he's going to fit into their schemes, right?
He cares about it. And there's no coolness to playing defense when it comes to Desmond Bane. Philip, I don't know if you remember that video. It was about probably March when Santi Aldama and Desmond Bane, got into it on the bench against the Jazz. It was kind of, a little viral video or whatever, and they got a little shoving match or whatever. But the cause of that was because Desmond Bane was telling Santi, play defense. Like, that's kind of who he is. He's that vocal guy. When people talk about Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, Des was probably the most vocal when it comes to challenging teammates, when it comes to say, hey, we need this out of you on the defensive end. Des was really good at those things. So, yeah, I think, he'll fit from that perspective. Of course, there's some limitations. Most of his limitations, I think, are just more physical. Since he has like the smaller arms or whatever, you're not getting like a whole bunch of deflections or really like playmaking defensive plays. He's solid and strong, so he's going to try to stay in front of his in front of his matchup, and he's going to contest shots and things like that. Desmond Bane's no pushover on the defensive end, so I think he'll be solid in that regard for a Magic team that kind of hangs a hat on that end.
Very interested to see how it plays out for Des in Orlando. We're going to miss him terribly in Memphis, I can tell you that. But speaking of Memphis, this is a crossover episode when we come back here on the podcast, a special Locked On Magic, Locked On Grizzlies edition of the podcast. We're going to talk about what exactly Memphis gets out of this deal. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Magic, see what I did there? A nice little crossover. I'm telling you what, I'm good at this. The NBA Finals are in full swing, and FanDuel is where you can get every night having wonderful highlight-worthy performances that also correlate and connect to an amazing experience over on FanDuel. Major momentum shifts, can't miss moments, game-winning shots, breakout players. There's never been a better time to get in on the FanDuel action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Maybe you've got a read on who's heating up going into the end of these finals. Why not back it up with a same-game parlay? And how does $200 bonus bets on and $5 bet first bet win sound to you? Sounds pretty good to me. We'll add to the excitement of these finals. If you're new to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you will get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. All right, Philip. So I've tried to ignore the national media talking heads because they just don't understand the Memphis Grizzlies really at all.
They don't understand the Magic either. So
yeah,
we get that.
as Damichael said earlier in the show, Jaren Jackson Jr. is not being traded. John Morant's not being traded. I usually lean on the Damichaels. Drew Hill is a great local writer. Chris Harrington there in Memphis. Damichael first and foremost, but I'm biased. The idea for the Grizzlies here is it creates more avenues for them to operate, right? So when you look at a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, has a down year for the Magic, lots of disappointment from Magic fans in terms of what he brought to the table. It almost kind of sounds like the way that some folks kind of saw Marcus Smart as he left Memphis. I'm having flashbacks reading some of the Magic responses. They thought he would be something that he wasn't. And then Cole Anthony, a lot of folks kind of say that he is a guy that Magic fans love. They loved his mentality, loved his energy, maybe not so much his on-court productivity, or maybe consistency is the best way to describe it. I'll get to Michael's take on this in a moment, because I've already heard, rumblings that Cole Anthony may not be long for the Beale Street life. But I would imagine that if Memphis's idea is to take the bigger $34 million Bane contract hit this coming season, roughly, and apply that across two players to add some depth, there's worse that they could have done. I mean, they literally did it with Marcus Smart back at the trade deadline. They could do worse than these two guys who theoretically could be rotation players for a Grizzlies team that's trying to be good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And look, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had a down year, and all of us in Orlando were trying to figure out why. Like, some of us thought, oh, maybe he's nursing a knee injury that he's not telling anybody about. Some of it could just simply be that the Magic's lack of playmaking, the lack of a true point guard, really hurt the quality of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's shot and just kind of knocked him off rhythm. Being
not playing with Nikola Jokic or LeBron James probably hurt him.
Yeah, that doesn't help. That hurts a little bit. And on top of that, like, the Magic, Paolo Banchero got hurt 5 games into the season. It's not like the Magic's offense was blistering before then, but you had a new player who plays off of certain players and doesn't have the opportunity to kind of get that rhythm and understand where his spots are going to be. So Paolo goes out 5 games in, 25, 30 games into the season. Franz goes out for a couple months. It kind of left Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on this island. And look, he still missed open shots. Like, he still got plenty of open shots, and they just wouldn't go, and he couldn't find his rhythm throughout the year. And so I am curious if going to Memphis, where you have John Morant, who is an excellent point guard, it can push the pace, can kind of get that movement going. Orlando's offense, it's not just that it's bad and they miss shots, it's also a slog. Like, they played so slow, and some of that is Jalen Suggs being out of the lineup for most of the season. But the Magic, Paolo likes to play slow. You take on the identity of your best player. And so I am curious. I do suspect Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is going to bounce back. Maybe he's not a 40% three-point shooter anymore, just age catching up with him. But he could easily be 37, 38%. He's still an excellent defender. Like, if the Magic had stuck with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I think fans would have been upset. I would have been like, look, they signed him for a reason. Last season could be an anomaly. He still was an excellent defender, still made up, the scariest defensive backcourt in the Eastern Conference at the very least. He still can give you that on a nightly basis. Like Desmond Bane, he doesn't get hurt. He plays through everything. He missed a game because his wife gave birth last year. He missed a game because the Magic rested him, which felt weird. He rarely misses games. Like, he will play through everything. And, I think he still has a little bit of gravity. If he gets hot and has a nice stretch, he's going to provide something for you. So I wouldn't give up on him. And on top of all that, I think the biggest thing, and honestly, I think the biggest thing the Magic are losing in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Cole Anthony is the locker room presence. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's been part of 2 championship teams. And everybody in this young Magic roster really felt that, and you kind of feel the wisdom. Like, he was someone that when he spoke, everybody listened, and he helped them, set off on a good start. Before, again, Paolo's injury so early in the season derailed everything. I think if that injury happens a month later, even if Paolo still misses the same amount of time, the Magic are in better shape. The fact that it happened within 2 weeks of the season starting, I think, really set the Magic back and really kind of threw everything up against the wall, because now they had to rethink and replan everything. KCP is a good veteran to have. He's a good guy to have. If he can find that spark in his shooting again, he'll be back to being a really quality role player for the team that he's on.
Michael, we can talk more about the draft picks to close out the show, what comes next section of this. How do you see Cole Anthony and KCP fitting in with this Grizzlies roster? Because to me, the KCP fit is pretty clear, right? Like that's one that whether it's as a reserve or even potentially as a starter, depending on how Memphis decides to move forward, him and Jalen Wells together makes me very excited as a backcourt matchup. That's going to make Jalen Wells' life a heck of a lot easier as they slide him, you would imagine, depending on what the next moves are, to the 2-guard spot where Bane was a resident player. How do you see Cole Anthony fitting? Because, again, they kind of have a cheaper Cole Anthony at home and Scottie Pippen Jr. How do you see that working out? Do you see Anthony as a better true point guard fit? To me, the biggest takeaway, I think KCP is more likely to stick than Anthony. That 12.1 or whatever, $13.1 million cap hit that comes from Anthony looks mighty tradable to me, partner.
Yeah, I knew that would get your juices flowing when you saw that contract. I said it won't be
team option on that last year, next year.
Yeah, if you want to get out of some cap issues.
Weltman special, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you just laid it out perfectly. With Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, they get another point of attack defender, another guy who can defend on the wing. This is obviously
they get a dog. They get a dog.
They get a dog. They get a dog.
You can listen to his Dog Talk podcast.
I saw what it's called?
That's what it's called.
Georgia kid.
He's a
I'm
Georgia.
so excited.
Yeah. So they literally went and got a dog. Like they wanted a dog.
Yeah,
they
a literal bulldog.
Dog.
Okay. That's He's a
I
dog.
don't think
in
that's allowed
ways.
in Tennessee.
Ooh, fair enough.
I think with Caldwell Pope though, that's what you get. You get a guy who kind of he fits the DNA that the Grizzlies are trying to create. On the defensive end. When we go past this season, like the issue was Jalen Wells. Hey, guard this guy, guard that guy. But when Jalen Wells couldn't do it, then there wasn't really many other options. You had Scottie Pippen Jr. guarding 6'8", 6'9" dudes. You had Scottie Pippen Jr. guarding Kevin Durant or whatever the case may be because you just didn't have anyone else. So now you have another option. That's huge for the Grizzlies. I'm with you with Cole Anthony. I'm looking at that one and I'm basically saying there's some overlap between him and Scottie Pippen Jr., and it's hard to see them playing 2 guards. Neither of them are, like 6'5", 6'6", or anything. Cole Anthony obviously is a really good athlete, but it's a tricky situation there. So we'll see kind of how that works out. But you mentioned it; they have a lot of draft capital and things coming up, so we'll see where they go on that end.
Dallas makes a ton of sense, especially since Memphis can get up. I think it's like 20 million they can aggregate in a trade with Cole Anthony. So that gets you like PJ Washington, Kyrie Irving's out for most of the season. Like there's some angles there that we'll talk more about here coming up next on this special crossover edition of Locked On Magic and Locked On Grizzlies. What comes next for both Orlando and Memphis coming out of this blockbuster deal? Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies, Locked On Magic crossover. Welcome back to this episode of Locked On Grizzlies and Locked On Magic. Yep, it's a crossover edition. Philip Rossman-Reich of Locked On Magic with Damichael Cole and myself of Locked On Grizzlies. Joe Mullinax here with you. It's been a lot of fun. I haven't cried yet, which Damichael will tell you, Philip, that's growth for me. He probably thought I would have broken down by now, given my relationship that Desmond Bane has no idea that we have, but I feel very close to Des. Damichael, if it's okay, I'll start off with you on this particular question. To me, the what comes next idea for the Grizzlies is fascinating because they literally can do anything. I don't think they're rebuilding, and most people that actually pay attention to the team, like you, don't think that they're rebuilding. But at the same time, if they wanted to, they most certainly could. If they wanted to get in on the Kevin Durant, Giannis conversation, it probably won't happen. But they have the assets now where it's not that far-fetched of an idea. Like there's so many different things that the Grizzlies can do. The more likely scenario to me, partner, is it's going to be in the middle, right? They're going to continue to retool around Ja and Jaren. It almost certainly guarantees the renegotiate and extend. Guys like my favorite John Konchar's days might be numbered. They're going to keep finding ways to try to get that number in a place where Jaren feels comfortable. And the future is now Ja and Jaren being your big two in this new CBA era. And you try to piece it together around those two guys. I don't think Memphis is done by any stretch. And I also don't think they plan on being bad. I think that whatever move they do next, it is going to be with an eye to not just being good for the, every year as sustained competitiveness, but they want to be good this coming season too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you got Ja Morant, you got Jaren Jackson Jr. You continue to build around them. You want to build around them. It's not a rebuild. It's kind of a retooling. It's kind of just, you want to kind of readjust the assets. And you think about, with the backcourt of Desmond Bane and Ja Morant, there was just a limited defensive upside. Joe, you've heard me talk about the idea of moving Jalen Wells to the 2. You get the 6'7" size there. With his size, it's just a more natural position for him. We'll see what comes of the 3 spot, but I don't think it has to be some big superstar. You look at what the Knicks did, like they could go find their OG Anunoby or their Mikal Bridges, and I mean I'm saying that like that's just simple, but that's kind of it can be a player who's not necessarily an all-star, but who's a quality 3-and-D player who can put the ball in the cup a little bit. I think that's something that the Grizzlies could definitely target. You talk about the idea of it being a big 2 and kind of just putting quality players around that. I think that's more of like the NBA's model going forward, and you see the Magic are really going for it. But a lot of teams are starting to kind of like go in the direction of dynamic duos and building around those teams like that.
You say the Magic are really going for it. And Philip, I think that Orlando fans have to be thrilled because the Magic never do this, right? They never do what they are doing. They are pushing in some, I wouldn't say they're all in because they still have a couple of things here or there they could do, but they're pretty close to all in. Like they're running out of chips. And they found a guy in Desmond Bane who checks so many boxes for them offensively. He's not going to kill them defensively like an Anthony Simons would have. This is something that maybe 2 years down the road, you have to worry about moving on from somebody because financially it may not be as salvageable anymore. But who cares about that right now? No disrespect to, you don't want anybody to get injured, but there's no Damian Lillard in Milwaukee. There's no Jason Tatum in Boston. Cleveland does not look nearly as mighty as they once did. Same thing with the Knicks. Nobody watches these NBA finals and goes, oh my God, the Indiana Pacers are a dynasty. The Eastern Conference is wide the hell open. Why not the Orlando Magic, right? Like you got to be more excited than ever before after this deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the Magic haven't paid the tax since Dwight Howard was on the team. It's been 13 years. And not only are they paying the tax, they're almost guaranteed to be a second apron team in 2027. How far over the second apron can they bounce back down? That's going to kind of be the dance for, I think, all these teams. But, the Magic, I think, really looked at themselves and said, look, we're pot committed with Franz Wagner. We gave him a max contract. We're going to give Paolo Banchero his max contract. He's going to get, if he makes all NBA this year, he's going to make $51 million in the first year of his extension. I know it's monopoly money. People need to get used to these numbers. That's just the way it is now. And so I think the Magic, again, they look at this landscape, they look and believe in the team that they have and the players that they're building around. And it's like, we can't let this pass by, especially this franchise, this organization. They lost Shaq at the peak of his powers. They lost Dwight Howard at the peak of his powers, not necessarily because they weren't afraid to go all in, but they worried a little bit too much about some things. Maybe they made some mistakes on the Dwight end. They didn't give Shaq the money that he was looking for at a time when contracts were changing. The Magic have been scarred by not pushing in early and making sure their stars had the supporting cast that they needed to succeed. Is Desmond Bane enough? Probably not. They still have some work to do to complete their roster, but it's a lot easier to build those guys on the margin than it is those top guys. What's different about the Magic and where they're at as compared to like New York, who gave up all those first round picks for Mikal Bridges, or Minnesota, who gave up those first round picks for Rudy Gobert, is that Paolo's 22. Jalen Suggs is 23. Franz Wagner's 23. Desmond Bane is the old guy at 27 next week. They're set up with guys under contract now, full control for the next 4 years to make a run at this thing. And I think what we're seeing in the league now is those windows get shorter. The Magic are going to have about as big of a window as I think any team's going to have under this new CBA.
I think that's a great way to look at it. Again, if I was a Magic fan, I'd be excited because Desmond Bane is not just a great basketball player. He's a great dude, right? Just watching him work and all as the leader, right? Again, he's not the best player on the team, but you could see him becoming that veteran kind of voice. You could do a heck of a lot worse than Desmond Bane. I'll get you guys out of here on this. And Damichael, I'll start with you. What does Memphis need next, right? We're talking about what comes next. And obviously over at Locked On Grizzlies and Locked On Magic with Philip, we'll continue to talk about these things in the days and weeks to come, especially with the draft coming up now for Memphis. We have content to talk about, Damichael. We can talk about a 16th pick later this week.
I can send you my notes later.
There you go. Yeah, please do, Philip. We need to. I need to get back in. I really wasn't paying much attention at all. But Damichael, what comes next for these Grizzlies? It doesn't have to be a specific player, but we were talking about bigs and wings. This changes the calculus a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're definitely going to target that two-way wing. They're trying to stockpile those. Like I don't want to underestimate what they're trying to do. Like it's very on the mind of the Grizzlies what the Thunder have done in terms of building this team, where you can't really just attack one guy and say there's the weakness, we're going to constantly go at him or this guy or that guy. What the Celtics did the previous year when they had pretty much all good defenders in their lineup. So the Grizzlies are trying to kind of just stockpile solid defenders to put around Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. to kind of build the team that way. So everything starts there. I think the days of them, last couple years, they were like the Magic. We were just talking about, they need to get shooting. They went and got Cam Spencer. They went and got Jalen Wells. They've gotten better with shooting. They lose some shooting with Des, which we'll talk about, over the course of this week at some point. But I think the number one thing for them is getting that wing defender who's got some offensive game too. But everything starts defensively with them. I think they're done with the players who are more offensive minded guys who don't really give you much on the defensive end.
Well, that's ironic because that's who their point guard is. And maybe that's something else we talk about on Locked On Grizzlies in the next couple of shows. Philip, we'll get you out of here on this. Same thing, same question. Like what did the Magic need now? Because they have bigs, right? And obviously with Desmond Bane, their offense is addressed. The big bright light is the point guard position, but you got Anthony Black, you got Bane who could do some secondary stuff. Do you think they kind of lean into the money ball, replicate in the aggregate idea of point guard, or they try to bring somebody in like a Tyus Jones?
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if the plan is to bring in a Tyus Jones. I've kind of been toying around with the idea of trying to find a way to move up from 25 back into like that 18, 19, 20 range to make sure you get Jace Richardson or Walter Clayton Jr. and make sure that you kind of get that spark plug point guard, essentially to replace what you got for what Cole Anthony did or was supposed to do throughout the season. But I think the biggest thing now we're seeing in these playoffs, how important depth is. And while the Magic have a lot of defensive depth, Anthony Black, Goga Bitadze, Jonathan Isaac are kind of their bench right now. Gary Harris has got a team option. I don't think they'll pick that up, but Gary Harris was an excellent defender. I think finding some scoring punch off the bench, more shooting, obviously. You're not going to be healthy the entire season. Like, Franz and Paolo are pretty sturdy. I know they had injuries this season, but they're pretty sturdy usually. Desmond Bane's had his injury issues. Jalen Suggs has certainly had his injury issues. So just rebuilding some depth, especially some offensive depth and scoring depth, I think is really important. And then I think it's really important to make sure they keep Mo Wagner. I wouldn't be shocked if they decline that option just to give themselves some wiggle room under the tax to go out and use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, but keeping him and keeping that kind of solid center rotation they have, or as solid as it can be, I guess, I think is still really, really important for this team.
Makes total sense to me. And of course, as this continues to unfold, lots of different ways that the offseason can go for both the Magic and the Grizzlies. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Magic, Locked On Grizzlies each and every day for all sorts of great content. It's not just crossover episodes. It's also daily analysis like you heard on this show. So thank you so much to Philip and Damichael for joining me. It's been a great episode of Locked On Grizzlies and Locked On Magic. And hopefully now that you've made this Locked On crossover episode of Locked On Magic and Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today, for your second listen, you're going to check out the 2025 Locked On NBA mock draft. I've got to listen now. I've got to figure out who you picked, Philip. A 5-episode
traded
series.
16.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I got to lock in. It's a 5-episode series with the most comprehensive NBA draft analysis from NBA experts to college experts and NBA draft experts. Find the 2025 Locked On NBA mock draft on NBA Big Board and Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, make sure you are liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. It is all good. Make sure you're an everydayer to Locked On Magic. Make sure you're an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies, Damichael Cole and myself, Joe Mullinax, there each and every time an episode drops. Hopefully you're hanging out with us. Hopefully you're hanging out with Philip moving forward. Philip, it's been a pleasure chatting with you here. Best of luck with Desmond Bane. Please take care of him. I'm going to do my best to not cry.
Best.
Please.
We'll do our best. Take care of Cole Anthony for however long he's there.
We'll take care of him as his bags stay packed. Just don't unpack just yet, Cole Anthony. Don't unpack just yet. And I'm saying that I got to do this every once in a while, Philip, because Damichael actually covered. Joe Mullinax is saying, just don't unpack just yet, Cole Anthony. Just KCP, hang around for a little bit, I think. But Cole Anthony, we'll see. We'll do some real estate shopping here in like a couple of months, maybe. For Philip, for Damichael, I'm Joe. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Stay locked in each and every day, each and every time an episode drops, whether it's Locked On Magic, Locked On Grizzlies. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, see ya.